The Holy Gospel according to Luke, the 20th chapter. Some Sadducees, those who say there is no resurrection, came to him and asked him a question. Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a wife but no children, the man shall marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers. The first married and died childless. Then the second and the third married her, and so in the same way all 7 died childless. Finally, the woman also died. In the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For the 7 had married her. Jesus said to them, those who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy of a place in that age and in the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. Indeed, they cannot die anymore, because they are like angels and are children of God, being children of the resurrection. And the fact that the dead are raised, Moses himself showed in the story about the bush, where he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Now he is God not of the dead, but of the living, for to him all of them are alive. And I invite you to please be seated. Folks, this may sound a little strange, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think we're a bunch of worrywarts. Let me explain. When it comes down to it, don't we all have our share of worries, right? We all have those things that worry us, those things that keep us up at night. Some are serious, right? When we worry about our kids or our grandkids, or we worry about some health diagnoses and the like. But it seems to me that there are a whole host of other things we worry about, and it seems that the majority of those things we worry about sometimes are a bit, trivial. I think we can be worrywarts sometimes. Let me explain. I sat with a group of women from Calvary, a fine, bright, very bright group of women this week, and I asked them, ladies, what sort of things keep you up at night? What sort of things do you worry about? And here are some of the answers. The first one, of course, sheepishly said, Pastor, I worry what I'm going to bake every time someone says they're going to stop by my house. I get all anxious. And the rest of the group of those ladies nodded and said, oh yeah. Others recalled a time here at church where the youth of the church were leading a worship service. And as part of that musical they were putting on, the kids had to run up and down the aisle as part of that. Someone said, our church really worried about that. They got really uptight, Pastor. That was probably a ridiculous thing to worry about. The number one thing those ladies said they worry about, get this, they said, Pastor, we never stop worrying about how clean our house is. Our house is. And guys, we have our own set of worries, right? Ladies, how many of you have heard your significant other overly concerned about the state of his lawn? Or the size of his garage, or his hunting shack, or his ice fishing house? Guys, we get worried too. If you're endowed with genes like my family, you're probably worried about that never-ending enlarging forehead. We worry about finding hair in all the wrong places. We worry. It's sort of funny, the things we worry about, isn't it? I think the majority of the things we worry about from day to day, not all, but many, maybe even most of our worries, they're sometimes kind of silly. Folks, I think I think Jesus in our reading today was talking to those of us who tend to worry, those of us who have all kinds of irrational worries. You see, Jesus is on his way to Jerusalem. He's headed to Jerusalem, and as he approaches that big city, there's that Palm Sunday processional. You remember, people lined the streets, they waved their palm branches, laid their coats out on the road in front of them, and they yelled, "Hosanna," as Jesus made his way into the city. And the first thing he does when he gets to the city is that he heads straight for the temple. Now, the temple was the holiest place of their faith. The temple was believed to be the place where the divine intersected with our human world. Some people believe the temple was built on the site where God actually gathered together the dust and created Adam, the first man. Others believe that it was the site where Abraham nearly sacrificed Isaac to prove his faith. Right there. It was right there that God directly intervened into our human experience. The temple, it was thought, was the holiest place on earth. So Jesus comes to town. Jesus, this sort of strange preacher guy from this nowhere town of Nazareth, he enters Jerusalem to a king's welcome, and the first thing he does is go up to that temple. And in a wild rampage, he starts to clear out. He drives out those money changers who were simply doing their job. Sometimes we think of them as crooks, but they weren't. They were simply serving all those pilgrims who made their way to the temple from all around. Jesus sends those guys running. Now, folks, this alone, you could imagine, would create kind of a stir in Jerusalem. In fact, it made the authorities, those high priests and all those religious muckety-mucks of the day, it made them all incredibly nervous. And so, as you know the story of what happens, they needed to find a way to get rid of Jesus, to get him out of the picture. And so, the story says they started questioning him. They questioned him again and again and again. They wanted to trap him. They wanted to find some legitimate reason to bring him before the court, or better yet, just to get rid of him altogether. So the religious leaders, they question him first about his authority, and he slides by that one. They then question him about paying taxes, and he slides by that one. They all want to catch him on some legality, some slip of the tongue. And finally today, in our reading for today, they seem to have gotten kind of desperate because they question him about this crazy, ridiculous situation. Did you hear it? They said to Jesus in our reading from our gospel reading today from Luke, they said words that go like this: "Jesus, there were once 7 brothers. The first married and died childless. So as is custom, Jesus, the second brother, married his wife, and in the same way, he died. This happened again and again. Each brother married the woman only to die childless, one after another, until all 7 brothers died." A woman in Bible study this week said, "Man, those guys shouldn't have married her." But finally, the woman also died, And they asked Jesus, "Jesus, in the resurrection, therefore, whose wife will the woman be? For all 7 had married her," Jesus. It's as if they're a bunch of junior high students trying to stump their teacher. Take that, Jesus. I imagine Jesus looked at all of them and said, "Really? Really? You're worried about that? Really? You come to tell me that that's your real worry in life? What happens to a widow who's been married 7 times, lost 7 husbands, and now she's dead? You goons are really worried about that?" Guys, you're worrying about all the wrong questions. All the wrong questions. Jesus knew that those Sadducees, they weren't concerned about what happens in the resurrected life. They could care less. You see, folks, bear with me here. In that ancient world where women had no voice at all, the only reason these men were worried about all this was because they wanted to know whose property was she. If all the husbands die, who gets the inheritance? They wanted to know if Jesus followed the laws about these things. Which husband did she belong to? She was simply property of her husband in that ancient, unjust system. They wanted to know, Jesus, where does the property go? But for Jesus, of course, that whole patriarchal system didn't reflect God's desire and God's love. And so for Jesus, they were worrying about all the wrong things. They were worrying about their status quo. They were worrying about their property, their stuff, their fears of losing their stuff, worrying about appearances. In Jesus' eyes, they were worrying about all the wrong things. And so Jesus takes those worries, it seems, and points those Sadducees in a different direction. It's as if he says, if you really want to worry about something, worry about this crazy system that turns women into property. If you really want to worry about the outcast and those who have no voice, those who have no say for themselves in this crazy world you've created. If you really want to worry about my children who grow up neglected. Worry about those who are rejected. Worry about those without health care or home or food or shelter. Worry about those who are abused, victims of war, refugees. We could go on and on. It's as if Jesus says, really, Really? You're worried about that? Guys, we have bigger fish to fry in this world. Folks, there are all kinds of things that we worry about, aren't there? But it seems to me we're not all that unlike those Sadducees. You know this. Many of the things we worry about from day to day are kind of trivial now and then. And we church people are sometimes major culprits in this. We can be worrywarts, and we worry sometimes about all the wrong things. For example, I maybe shared this story before, but it's worth repeating. When I was a kid, I'll never forget my mother coming home from a really long circle meeting, where they were deciding what brand of coffee pot to purchase for the church basement. After this 2-hour meeting, she came barreling into our house. Bear with me here. My dad was the pastor of that church. She came barreling into the house and looked at my dad and pointed at his face and said, "You'd think Jesus died and rose again so we could buy a new coffee pot for that church." We do this, don't we? We make majors out of minors. I think Jesus is maybe nudging us today. Maybe encouraging us in our own lives, pushing us to look deeper out into the world. Let's worry more about the big issues of the world. That's why I think maybe we lift up all these quilts and these kits today to remind us of those around the world who so desperately need our thoughts and our help. Just maybe they're the ones that we could afford to worry a little more about. And folks, I think there's one more thing. I think Jesus is telling us today, telling you and me who spend a lot of time worrying in this life of ours, I think Jesus in this reading today is looking at you and me too and saying, you don't have to worry. You don't. That house you perceive that's so messy, it's okay. You live in that house. You know, you don't have to bake all the time. That forehead, yeah, it's getting bigger, but I created you that way. Your bank account, it's big enough. Your kids, they don't have to be involved in every activity and be perfect in everything and all go to Harvard. That lawn of yours, it's green enough. You don't have to worry. And maybe Jesus is also reminding us that Jesus walks this journey with us. And God promises today, promises to never leave your side. Thanks be to God. Amen.